Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode of House of Tallysha. For this episode I'm very happy because it was actually suggested by my followers on Instagram. And it's a topical episode in the sense that I would like to talk to you about Berlin, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. And because I am Portuguese, and I was born in Germany, I have this very fond memory of Berlin, and it's a place that I like to revisit periodically, and part of my heart actually lives in Berlin because my German family is from that corner of the world. And the reason why I'm here today is, first of all, thank you to my Instagram followers for having suggested me to record this episode. And the other reason, and it's a wonderful reason, it's that, so the second reason, it's been 30 years since the wall came down. And I remember that November evening in 1989 when the wall collapsed, metaphorically, symbolically, and also physically. I was born in the 70s. We lived under the shadow of a divided Germany, a divided Berlin, a divided world. Division has been a hallmark of the world ever, forever and ever. But when it is very close to home, when it is very close to our hearts, we feel it more than ever. And on that November evening in 1989, I remember my mom just saying, "Die Mauer ist weg, die Mauer ist weg." The wall is over, the wall is gone. And she was crying with joy and disbelief and surprise. And I was very young at the time, but I remember growing up with the stories of people going from one place to the other and the impossibility that was to move freely from one part of Berlin to the other, from one part of Germany to the other. And there were horror stories about people that were coming away from there. My aunts came away from the horror of the division of Berlin. So I grew up with that very close, very near, and always hovering constantly. And so here you have this bookmark of the Brandenburg Gate, the Brandenburger Tor, from 1900 to 2006, and the evolution. And then, of course, here the division in black and white to say, you know, symbolically, it was black and white, and it was. And so when the wall came down was a very happy moment for all of us. And now we just think about the past, and luckily and so fortunately it is in the past, all of that. And if you go to Berlin, it's this incredible, very cosmopolitan city, a very green city, very amenable to be. And the wall now fortunately lives in these souvenirs, and I believe this is a fake piece of the wall that I have here in this magnet, this fridge magnet. So the wall doesn't leave anymore. So it lives in my fridge, and it lives in the fridges of millions of people. So, and this is the place where it should live, the wall. Another very curious thing, if you go to Berlin, you are going to see bears everywhere. The bear is the symbol of Berlin. Well, there are stories, but we don't exactly know why the bear became the symbol of Berlin. Probably it was because in the past, one of the rulers of Berlin had the epitome of the bear. But also there is this other theory that Berlin. So the first syllable of the city, Berlin, is also the word bear in German. Very close to the English language, of course, because English is a German language. So Berlin bears all over Berlin if you go to Berlin. And this is the very fun symbol for the Berlinese of Berlin. And talking about the wall and the impact it had on so many people's lives, there is a movie that I love, and it is a brilliant movie by Wolfgang Becker, which is Goodbye Lenin. And it's a comedy, and I have it in English and I have it in German. The German are not very known for being comedians or having a great sense of humor. Wrong. They do have a sense of humor. And who better than the Germans to make a comedy about the Berlin Wall and the way it came down. And so Goodbye Lenin is about this family. They lived in the former Democratic Republic of Germany, so that was the communist Germany. And the mother of the family, she was a very staunch communist, and she believed in the values of communism. But then she has an episode of an accident, and she goes into a coma. And when she goes into a coma, the wall comes down. And when she wakes up from the coma, the doctors tell the son and the family, well, she cannot suffer any emotional, heavy weights because she might die. And the comedy is all the lengths that the family, especially the son, go through to pretend that Germany is still divided, that the wall is still there, that Berlin is still divided. And if I can advise you to to watch the movie, so do it, because you will laugh your eyes out, and it is so funny. And it's a comic relief. It's a healthy way, a very cathartic way to talk about the impact that the wall had on so many people's lives and the joy it was when it finally collapsed and it finally came down. And so this is an episode that is really close to my heart because my roots are there in Germany. And my roots are also in Portugal, and I can appreciate the wonderful things of both cultures and of both countries. And Berlin is so close to my heart because of what it stands for in human history and in the history of Europe. If you recall, there is a piece of the wall on my fridge, the place where it should be. Here, there it is. And my fridge reminds me to tell you a little bit more about the division of Berlin. And although it doesn't exist anymore, it was visible for so many years because it stood between 1961 and 1989. If you go to Berlin today, it will be difficult to find the actual wall. And when you are strolling around Berlin, a very easy way for you to understand whether you are in the former East Berlin is if you look at traffic signs, if you look at traffic lights. Yes, traffic lights. And although rare, if you see traffic lights with this pedestrian and with this pedestrian, you will see that you are in what was once East Berlin. Of course, it is still East Berlin, geographically, but not symbolically or politically. These are called Ampelmenschen, the people of the lights. And this is a a pedestrian with the shoes and the hat, and he's walking, the hat, the shoes, and he's standing. And nowadays, if they are rare, these traffic lights, but if you find them, take pictures of them and remember that they were used as the traffic signs in East Berlin. Of course, today they are mostly tourist attractions, or they make for nice souvenirs, like not just fridge magnets, but also mugs and teacups. So you will have these as souvenirs of a bygone era. And I'm very happy and very full of joy that these that represented something so dark in the history of the world, that was the division of East Berlin and the world being divided between East and West, politically, ideologically. These are now tourist attractions, tourist souvenirs. Of course, also that when you talk about the division of Berlin, something that became iconic as well was when President Kennedy visited the city back in the 60s at the height of the Cold War. And he had this very monumental sentence because he wanted to show belonging and understanding of what was the city representing at the time and what people lived at the time. And he said very famously, "Ich bin ein Berliner." And of course, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I am a Berlinese, became an iconic sentence of the president. And of course, that everybody knows that when the president said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I am a Berliner, he meant that he was part of the city, he was also a Berlinese. But grammatically speaking, ein means it means I am a Berlinese, I am one Berlinese. But the thing is that you have a little pastry, almost like a donut without the hole, that is a Berliner ball, that is also a cake. In Portuguese, we call it actually Berliner ball, bola de Berlim, and it's very popular also here in Portugal. So it is a donut, and he said, "I am a donut, I am a Berlin donut," because that is the pastry. So "Ich bin ein Berliner," a very iconic sentence, and also somehow of a comic relief for what happened to that city, to what happened to Berlin. So also very well located in my fridge. And that's it for today. We talked about Berlin and how much it means to me, how much it means for the history of the world. If you like these sorts of contents, subscribe the channel, leave comments and suggestions below for other episodes that you would like. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me here at House of Tallysha and for sharing with me these souvenirs and these memories. And of course, I will be waiting for you here at the channel, here in my house. I will be seeing you next time. I will be waiting for you.
All free men, wherever they may live, are citizens of Berlin. And therefore, as a free man, I take pride in the words, "Ich bin ein Berliner."